So that's moved by David and seconded by Glenn. So, right, is there any discussion? Yanni?
Thank you for this report. I think it is really important that we do acknowledge the concern that has been expressed, and we do need to take action in regards to the stress that the Tonkin and Taylor report and the district plan review has caused in our local communities. This isn't actually a coastal issue, this is a citywide issue. I want to stress that point, because although a lot is talked about the coastal hazards, I think in some ways that misrepresents the impact that this has on entire communities within our city that actually are nowhere near the coast but are impacted by what is being proposed and the impacts of the Tonkin and Taylor report. So I welcome the opportunity to get a peer review on this. I think it's important that we do acknowledge that the district plan fast track process has been unsatisfactory on a wide number of levels. Least of which is the community to actually understand how we're making land use decisions in our city, and to be informed about what the different options are and what the potential outcomes could be. So this is, I think, a step in the right direction in terms of addressing just one area of it, which has obviously caused a lot of concern. I think the issue around the limbs is really important, and you know, I am concerned that we have a report that has had a lot of red flags raised about it informing the building consent, but I appreciate the work that the Mayor's done in that regard in terms of getting changes to the RMA and the Building Act so that perhaps we can take a bit more of a more straightforward approach to how we do assessments, because if it's not in the right legislation, then obviously getting that fixed is really critical. But I do just also want to thank the Christchurch Coastal Residents Group. I do think, you know, they've spent a huge amount of time and effort and energy dealing with issues that we should have been dealing with. I appreciate the work that they've done towards highlighting the concerns on behalf of communities that are deeply affected. And, you know, I just want to say, you know, place on record that we should commend them for their questioning of what we're doing, so that you know, at the end of the day, hopefully, as a result of this process, we get a much better outcome for everyone concerned. And we need to just be really clear in what our messaging is, because I think that's been also part of the other frustration, is that in some messaging, it's made it seem like we don't want development on the coast. Other messaging has been that we want to enable things to happen as a city. So actually working out what we intend to do through a much wider, broader and longer consultation and engagement process, I think is the right approach. Thank you.
Glenn.
Thank you. Just 2 points in relation to this. I support the recommendations in relation to the Tonkin and Taylor report. With what I said before in my questions, I think the credibility is now looking questionable. Secondly, over the tendering process, yes, they are OAG guidelines, but they are there for a reason, to keep councils transparent. And emergencies councils still have to abide by the rules at this time too, even if time is a factor. As you've said, Mayor, previously, we need these conversations over a longer time, and that's actually what sat behind the Coastal Information Hub anyway. But however it happens, it's the process that hasn't been good. I have some questions over the science, but in the main I support it, but it's the process. It's been far too damaging for our communities.
Paul.
I'm going to support the resolution today. I think it's really important, and I think I'm really pleased to see we've come to this point. When you're dealing with something so contentious as sea level rise and the science around it, I think we need to be responsible and peer reviewing and getting the best science possible and taking time to do it, because obviously it's something that affects our city to such a degree, and we hear 13%, that is reasonably significant and has a massive impact on how we actually develop in the future. So, you know, personally, I'm a little bit disappointed we haven't seen the central government step up and put a national policy in place that actually guides the local authorities, so we don't end up in this position. And we have a large part of our country which has a lot of population living around the coast. We're going to see, you know, potential litigation all around the countryside, and the opportunity for inconsistencies in the policies that the local authorities put in place. So I welcome this here. I want to get the best possible science. I want to get the best possible outcome for our city going forward, and I think we do need to take time, do it properly, and actually do it with our community.
Great. Phil?
I reiterate, thanks for the quality of the report that staff have provided. Last night, as I was reading reports, I was listening to radio, and the first draft of the Paris Agreement was coming through. And I took a note of what that first draft said about climate change. And it said that climate change is an urgent and potentially irreversible threat to human societies and the planet. And that's why I think it's really good that the local communities and this council and staff and the Commissioner for the Environment are taking it seriously. And I really hope that our central government also takes it seriously in providing that national framework which has been referred to. And I think that at this point, that asking for the further peer review, that certainly should assist our decision making, but also the comments of the staff, and it's a staff role to put them on the limb, so that we ensure that they're clear and accurate, and we ensure some fairness. And there's no question around the Tonkin and Taylor report or any report on sea level rise that they're based on assumptions. But I would remind councillors that the Tonkin and Taylor report has already been peer reviewed, and that peer review said that the assumptions it was based on were fair and the results were valid. Again, though, it is really, I think, a good science to obtain a further peer review. So, and I think in terms of the LIMS part, our council were legally obliged to put that information on LIMS under the Lagoima. And so there's really no grounds at all that our council had to withhold that information. So I think that certainly not only the people in the east, but all the people in Christchurch are entitled to further clarity around this, and so I'm certainly supporting the recommendations.
David?
Thank you. This is quite a momentous day for me. I think way back in the early stages of the district plan process, I did express my concern about that process, and particularly relevance of aspects of the Tonkin and Taylor report. So the process that we engaged in at the time was rushed. The significance and importance of coastal science was not given the credence that I think it really deserved. Our community, particularly our residents on the coast, have been in considerable angst over the coastal hazards provisions and coastal inundation. The T&T report was questioned on several fronts and found wanting. That's my opinion, but I'm very confident that was supported by a vast number of local people and a number of scientific experts in the field. I'm continually reminded, agreed to a degree, of Peter Beck saying, the wisdom of the people far exceeds the knowledge of the experts. And grudgingly I have to accept he's been right in that one. The government removed the planning provisions. There was an assumption in our community that we were starting with a clean slate. The LGA provisions, I think it's section 44A, paragraph 2, whatever, really state that if we are in possession of information that suggests there's a potential hazard, we have to acknowledge that. That is a philosophy that I have struggled with intently. I have now come to the realisation that I can't fight that, and that the way forward is the manner that we are now approaching. I did prepare a notice of motion, which I had hoped may come to this meeting. It is due to go to the DPR meeting next week. If this is, if this motion is passed, I'll withdraw that nomination. My objective has always been to remove the Tonkin and Taylor report and subsequent limb information that's been attached to it, and start with a clean sheet. People mentioned the Broome report earlier on, and when we look at our open coastline, the use of the Broome method is totally inappropriate. That method applies to a beach in static condition. We have a coastline that is grading at a considerable rate annually, and hence gives rise to a number of the criticism of the Tonkin and Taylor report. The Parliamentary Commission for the Environment's report was released last month. The Commissioner was reasonably critical of wording on limbs, and we are taking steps to address that. And I think there's a couple of comments that she made in her report that I want to emphasise today. Councils must use science that is fit for purpose and engage with the community in a measured way with empathy. Secondly, we must plan for sea level rise, but there is time to do it carefully. It is more important to do it well than to rush. So I'm very happy to support this motion today. I believe the resolution provides a measure of closure for this issue. Peer reviewing by a scientific panel approved by the interest groups. Very important to me, that aspect. It also provides an action plan post receipt of the peer review to actually look at where we're going to go forward, not only with our future planning, but with the wording that is on limbs at the moment. The third and important thing is that it does acknowledge the Building Act provisions and a desire to have them move to the Resource Management Act. I think that's a very smart move as well. And as our Mayor has indicated, we are at a point in history when we have the same Minister for the Environment and the same Minister for Building Control. So no other time in history will we have that opportunity to put that resolution into place. I'm told that our staff have been trying for a number of years to correct these anomalies, and hopefully we are in a position to do it. Finally, I'd just like to say we are now giving ourselves the ability to restart this process in an open and transparent manner in accordance with the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment's guidelines. And I would trust that this process goes through a very robust and transparent process, and that we do get to a stage where we can start with a clean slate and do, as the Commissioner says, this process in a timely manner. It's more important to do it well than to rush. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And because you moved the motion, you're entitled to have the last word, but, you know, I'm the Mayor. And, but all I want to do, because I've already spoken, is really to thank staff. It's taken 3 different tranches of the organisation to bring this together. It's taken our planning staff, it's taken our legal team, and it's taken our building control team. So, and the 3 of them have actually pulled together all of the elements that were really outstanding as a result of the decision to pull this out of the district plan review process that that is in place at the moment. I do want to acknowledge the community. The group that's presented this morning, but also all of the other community groups that have been engaged in the process since the notification occurred. There are lots of views in the community, and there is a desire to address areas that are particularly vulnerable. There are differences between coastal erosion and coastal inundation. You know, even myself found myself in a coastal inundation area, and I live in Burwood. But I was already in a flood management area, so I guess in many respects I wasn't surprised. So there's a lot of work to be done, and this puts us on a very stable platform. Can I just acknowledge all councillors for the respect and the understanding that you've shown in terms of the way that this issue has been dealt with this morning. I really, really appreciate it. So on that note, can I, and one other thing, the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment has agreed to come down and do a public session in February next year, so that's as soon as we can get her down here, and I think people will really value the opportunity to be able to hear from her directly and to start that very much more extensive and appropriate public conversation about the realities of living in a coastal environment in New Zealand today and in the future. So on that note, can I put the motion? All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Great.